Okay, Google, get me directions to Guatemala.
The best way to get to Guatemala City by car is via Tapachula, Carretera Federal 200, and will take about 14 hours and 39 minutes.
Well, as many of you know, we were in lockdown in Oaxaca, Mexico for nearly 50 weeks. And in the last few weeks, or last few months, we've seen lots of European overlanders starting to get on the road and move around a bit. In the beginning, they were very happy to be out of lockdown in Nicaragua or Guatemala, which was completely locked at the borders. The land borders were completely closed. And so they were happy to get out of there and get to Veracruz in Mexico, which is a big shipping port, and then ship back to Europe. But then more recently, in recent weeks, we've seen other people who flew back from Europe. They had their vehicle in storage in Central America somewhere, and they flew back from Europe and picked up their vehicle and started traveling again. And so we'd seen more and more travelers starting to move around, and so that gave us hope that we'd be able to go and see some more of Central America, what we set out to do. Now, that's not to say we didn't have it really good where we were. We were very fortunate to land where we did when COVID hit. I've mentioned this a few times, but we arrived in Oaxaca just to visit some friends, and we told the gatekeeper we would pay for 3 days camping, 3 nights, and just to visit some friends who we knew were staying there. And then we were the last ones to be admitted in, and very quickly COVID hit hard. Beginning of March 2020, the city and state of Oaxaca started locking down. You weren't allowed in public unless you had a place to go, and you must be wearing a mask. So yeah, we realized at that time how locked down everything was going to get, and how fortunate we were to land in such a comfortable place with excellent facilities, beautiful campground, and we made a ton of friends while in lockdown in Oaxaca. Travelers from all over the world, Europe, of course, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, the nether regions. And it was actually really, really good to hang out with these people and to be forced to camp out or camp with them for so long, because we got so much good travel advice and life advice. Many of these people are older and have traveled for many, many years, and so to get their take on overlanding and life on the road from another perspective was really good and refreshing. And so we made really great friends with everybody, considering there were 37 of us from all walks of life all around the world. We all got along really well for the most part. And with 37 people, statistically, there's going to be a birthday every other weekend. So we had tons of birthday parties, pool parties, birthday pool parties, and parties for days ending in Y. So as weeks turned into months and months into more months, some people were getting homesick, wanted to visit their grandbabies and take care of stuff at home. So our numbers started dwindling, people shipping back to Europe or driving back to the States or Canada. And our numbers dwindled and dwindled until our team of 37 was just us. But I tried to use our time productively. I was able to get some work online, which helped with the funding for this whole debacle. I tried to get some odds and ends and work done on the truck, most of which doesn't warrant a video, unfortunately, but just little odds and ends. Extended the lighting over top of our cooktop, countertop area, added some lighting in the back pantry. I installed a solar powered hot water heater. If you haven't seen the video for that, you can click the card up here. I made some improvements to our fridge compressor cooling fans and automated our ceiling ventilation fans, which has been much enjoyed. Finally was able to get a 3D printer put in the truck, which if you haven't seen that video, it's a yee. We had a local upholstery guy recover our dinette seat cushions, replacing the brightly colored but badly stained cushions we had with something a little darker, a little more robust. And of course, really boring but time-consuming renovations to our electrical systems. I've designed those P-channel driver boards that control all of our loads and switch stuff off and on, which is really great. And some big things like our KC Turbos 300X, Stage 2 turbo, Stage 2 high pressure oil pump, bellowed up pipes and some other engine improvements, which have been phenomenal. Climbing some of these mountainous regions in Guatemala, they're steep roads with switchbacks, and you really need to come to a full stop to do the switchback, and then just get that turbo spooled up, and it just sings up the hills. It's good. So I'm really happy I got the chance and some time to do a little bit of a reset and tackle some of those annoying things that annoyed us on the road, but I didn't really have time to fix. But with our Mexican visas expiring in the coming weeks, and the land border to Guatemala recently opened for non-essential travel, we figured it was time to pack up and head south, which is exactly what we did. A couple 5 hours of driving per day for 3 or 4 days, and we were at the Guatemalan border. As we leave Oaxaca, you go through this high mountain desert, arid areas, lots of agave plants being cultivated there. But as we got further south through Chiapas, the landscape quickly changed from dry, arid to rainforest and lush green canopy. Lots of agriculture of palm, coconut trees, I mean to say. And yeah, the closer we got to the border, the greener it got. All right, so at the time of filming this, Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Honduras all require negative COVID testing to get into the country, to get your stamp. And so we contacted some friends of ours who'd gone through some weeks earlier and got a referral to a laboratory where they had their test done, and we made an appointment for the next working day, Monday morning. And they do all their COVID testing in a separate building, just for reasons. So it's kind of a rundown little office they've rented near to the lab, and we went in, and pretty quick and easy, got our nose swabs done. Very enjoyable. I recommend it to everyone. And just like that, we were positive that we did not have COVID. So we took our negative tests and beelined for the border. Now, when you get to the border of Mexico and Guatemala, you need to get a stamp on your passport out of Mexico and then drive through to Guatemala, where you then get stamped in. And this was no problem. We presented our negative COVID tests and got our stamp on our passport, our visa, for 90 days in the C4 countries. And that went smooth and easy. And then we had to go a couple 100 meters further, and there is the SAT office, which is the vehicle import permit. You need to get a permit to bring our rig into the country, and that's where everything went pear-shaped really fast. Sorry guys, got to change locale, get out of the sun, because it is super intense at these elevations and this far south. But anyway, back to the story. We arrived at the vehicle import office, and that's where it all went south. The girl at the counter took our papers and mulled through them for about 20 minutes, and then told us it's her lunch break at 10 after 12. And so she gave us all our stuff back, and we had to go wait in our truck. So we stopped the whole line, and we're sitting there waiting. But during this whole time, the guys who are just watching that you don't sneak through on their lunch break, we could hear them on their cell phone watching YouTube videos. We could hear my voice over my shoulder. And later they asked us a bunch of questions about where we'd been and what a 3D printer is for. But so it's kind of nice to get that kind of attention sometimes. Unfortunately, it was no good for us getting in. So eventually the girl came back from lunch at 1 o'clock and gave us the runaround for hours. At first, our vehicle insurance expiry date is shown or listed as continuous. In Saskatchewan, our vehicle insurance is deducted from our bank account monthly if you choose to do so, and we do, because we left Canada in 2018, so our insurance just automatically renews until we intentionally stop or cancel the coverage. And so our vehicle insurance paper says expiry date continuous, and that just does not compute with her. Your vehicle insurance needs to have an expiry date. And then she wasn't satisfied that our vehicle doesn't have a title. In Saskatchewan, our vehicle registration, insurance, and title, or proof of ownership, is all rolled into one document, one electronic system, all managed by SGI, which is the government insurer in Saskatchewan, and she just would not accept that we don't have a vehicle title. So I needed to contact SGI and get a letter or a statement to that effect, stating that the vehicle was insured, we are the owners, and there is no title, and to smarten up. The whole while I've been sitting with our truck at her window at the border entry, and it was at this point, about 3 hours into this ordeal, they were trying to sneak a semi past the side of our truck, and they jammed it between our vehicle and the office building. So it was at this moment I was very glad that our truck is made from a harder material than semi-trailers. Sorry guys, you're going to need to bear with the wind and the ever-changing light conditions here. This is getting to be impossible, but I try my best. Anyway, we finally got the letter from SGI, a beautiful company letterhead in color, printed 2-page letter, signed in ink, and then scanned, and it basically said, yes, the vehicle is registered, this is the make and model and so on, and it is insured, and the vehicle is fully insured for liability, etc., etc. Although there was no statement saying that the vehicle did not require a title or had no title, which is what I needed to provide. But it was all written in English, looked very formal and official, so I had it printed off and took it to her. Knowing she spoke no English and read no English, she looked at it for 15 seconds, both pages, stamped it to the back of her copy of the paperwork, stamped our permit, gave us the sticker for our windshield, and after 5.5 hours of torment, we were finally on our way. Unfortunately, this meant we had 1.5 hours to drive 2.5 hours. Before it was dark on these very narrow, very tight, very steep switchback mountain roads with no guardrails. So it caused for some white knuckle, all hands on deck, eyes glued to the road, watching for cattle or 4 people on a scooter with no lights because their skirt is hanging over the back of the scooter or whatever. So that made for a stressful last few hours to cap off that day. So as night fell, the slight vibration I'd been feeling for the last 8 hours of driving in the shifter and steering wheel was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was going through my mind every possible variable of changes I'd made to the truck that may have, something may have gone wrong or not tightened properly or what have you. And I didn't want to say very much to Cara because she would stress out and worry. So I just tried to think through it, what it could be, and monitor that it was not getting too much worse. But after 2.5 hours from the border, we finally got to our destination for the night, which Cara had found online, a hotel with a parking lot that would let overland travelers stay there the night. So we stayed there, and man, that was the most well-needed rest that I'd had in a long time. It was just an exhausting day. So the whole evening I sat there trying to logically think through what the cause of this vibration turned shaking could be. As I mentioned, we'd done some work to the truck in the months prior, new up pipes, turbocharger, high pressure oil pump, and I was thinking through all of this, what might have caused some problem, because the vibration was only notable during acceleration, when I was accelerating or pushing up a hill. Under deceleration, it was nice and smooth. If I put the manual transmission into gear and used the engine as a brake to descend through long, steep hills and so on. And so I thought it could be engine related. But in the days prior, I had already done cylinder contribution tests, and they came back clean. So didn't think it could be that. We'd also done a tire rotation some months earlier and driven on them very little since then. But I had religiously re-torqued the lug nuts and again recently re-tightened everything. So short of a tire going horribly out of balance on its own for some other reason, I discounted tires as being the problem. Also, they wouldn't vibrate on acceleration as compared to deceleration, I didn't think. And lastly, I was thinking it might be driveline, drive shafts and universal joints, etc. But I kind of doubted it because we had recently had our whole driveline rebalanced. They took the drive shafts all off, spun them on a lathe or their machine, balanced them, and new Spicer U-joints on the whole system. So I really doubted that it was a U-joint. But so I thought through everything the night before, and then once sun came up the next morning, I started looking everything over, got underneath the truck, and what do I find? In spite of this all being new, like a year ago, I've blown the U-joint out of this thing. But we weren't really in the best place to find parts. We're in some small little mountain village in Guatemala. Some guy driving by with his back half of a Tacoma being pulled by a donkey. Seems like he has all his ducks in a row. We even had the little mechanic in town come by, and they confirmed that it is the U-joint, of course, but that there's pretty slim chance of getting parts in this neck of the woods. They'd probably need to be sent in from the next bigger city, Guatemala City, and it would be a couple of days at least. And since the vibrations weren't that bad, manageable, and worst case scenario, I could just pull the rear drive shaft off, put it in 4x4 and run it in front wheel drive. Although not the best idea for a smaller differential up front. In an emergency, I could get by that way. So for that reason, we decided to press on, and it was only about another 2 hours until we got to another big-ish center, and so we pushed on. But things got really bad really quick. I was able to stop a couple of times and check on things, and the U-joint was getting hot. I would spray it down with oil, and as you can see here, there's needle bearings. They were just falling out every time I stopped. There's a few less needle bearings left in there. But I cooled it with WD-40 as best I could, and then spackled it with some grease to try and keep it lubricated. So finally, we made it to the top of the mountain range we were climbing, the volcanic mountain range, and then down the other side into a town the locals call Shela. Its real name is this. And the downhill was easy enough because when we're decelerating, engine braking, the drive shaft would just somehow snap into the U-joint rather would snap into the place it was happy to decelerate without vibration. So we arrived in Shela, tried to find a mechanic shop that could find us parts, or a parts shop, obviously. But we'd only been in Guatemala for less than a day, and we had no cell phone coverage. Our SIM cards from Mexico don't work in Guatemala, and so we needed to find this without data on our phones. So we ended up camping out behind a McDonald's that had free Wi-Fi, and did a bunch of searching around. Couldn't really find a solid answer, someone who could help us. And so the next morning we just set out to the address of these places. So we headed out, tried to find some shops or car parts stores that might be able to help us find a part. Although we had pretty poor success, we ran into one of the customers at the shop whose name is Amilcar, spoke very good English, and was able to help us middleman some of the technical details, translation we needed done. For example, the universal joint isn't called a universal joint, but a cross. But anyway, we got referred to a place called La Casa del Resorte, the House of Springs, and it's a big industrial spring suspension shop. Looks like they mostly do semis and dump trucks and buses and that sort of thing, but they were happy to direct us in. They gave us a spot and instantly had 3 guys under the truck who were able to diagnose the problem, cooked universal joint, and they were pretty sure they could get parts within a couple hours. And so I gave the go-ahead, and within minutes, those 3 guys had that complete drive line from the transfer case to the differential pulled out. And as you can see, that universal joint's pretty floppy. So they had it knocked out, sent a guy to go get parts, and within 2 hours from when we rolled in to when we rolled out, they had that whole drive line pulled apart. They re-greased all of the universal joints inside, even the front one, which was not greasable, or didn't have a grease zerk on it, and greased all of our steering components, everything, and all for a very, very fair price. They charged us 200 quetzales, Guatemalan quetzales, which is about 25 American dollars for labor. The parts are a little more expensive down here than in America, but it's a custom specialty part, I suppose, so they charge a little more at the parts shop for those. But overall, a very favorable outcome. All said and done, we rolled into that shop with tattered spirits from the hardships of the day before, and really not expecting a spring suspension shop to be able to help us, given all the shops we'd tried before. But they, in under 2 hours, knocked out our whole drive line, all serviced, everything greased, new Moog universal joint where it was needed. And Lester, the boss there, heard of our story. You know, we've driven from our home in Canada to the Arctic Ocean to Mexico, and now all through Guatemala heading south. And it was just happy to hear of our adventure and our the time we were having, wanted us to have the best time, and had heard of our troubles finding data, cell phone SIM cards. And so he hopped in his truck and went and bought us phone SIM cards and didn't charge us for us, didn't want anything for it, just wished us farewell and good luck on our journey. So almost in tears trying to tell the story, because those are the moments that it's those are the moments when things are so hard and you find good people. So anyway, we're here now, finally able to relax a little bit. We're at Lago Atitlan in kind of northwest Guatemala. It's a giant lake. It's a 100-kilometer road around the lake, although it's a very slow-going road, so it's not like you'd drive it in a couple hours. It seems many of the people here travel by water taxi, so we've done that twice. We went with some friends we've made here to nearby Puebla. There's an American expat there who's made a little barbecue joint. So we went there one day and had some barbecue. And then another day we went for a hike to a little Puebla in the other direction with some friends. And there's a German restaurant there. So we had schnitzel and spätzle and sauerkraut and all that sort of stuff. Kara's maybe going to put together a little video for our members, our supporting channel members, just of our daily trotting about and what there is to see and do here. So members can look forward to that. Thank you to all of our channel members. Your patience blows my mind. We've been under the weather, haven't made a video for a few weeks, and what do? They send me personal emails asking how I'm doing and hoping everything is going well. So thank you guys for your patience and for your ongoing support. It's a bit of a transition to get moving and get traveling again and get in the swing of making travel-related videos and what there is to see here. So thanks so much for your ongoing support. If you're interested in becoming a channel member, there's a little join button down below. You can click on that and check out the channel membership options available to you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.